Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Hawkins. Welcome to this new episode of the Explicitly Pro-Life podcast. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you're subscribing to all these awesome podcasts. They just keep getting better. And to make the podcast even more awesome than it already was, we have my good friend Ryan Bomberger joining us today. He is the founder of the Radiance Foundation. Ryan is an amazing pro-life advocate, content creator. You've probably seen his work on social media, either graphics or videos. He has family like super musical. You guys even like make your own pro-life jingles and then make it into a pro-life video. Like you just take it to like a complete next level. So this is Ryan. Ryan, you've been on the podcast before, but thanks for joining us today because we have to talk about some stuff and you're the expert. So.
Hey, well, you're an expert too, so it's great to be here with you, Kristen.
Oh, I just know the experts. That's the key of having a podcast, right? I just invite people who know way more about all these subjects than I do. I love doing the Explicitly Pro-Life podcast because I feel like I learned so much more than I would just reading some articles. So I'm glad to have you on. So I invited you on. You were on the show, I think last year or so. We did an episode together. But there's been a lot of talk in the media about, this leaked decision about reversing Roe and what it's going to mean, when abortion is made illegal in 26 states and all these mean pro-lifers out there are passing laws now that also prohibit abortion in cases of rape or incest. And I've been interviewing with USA Today, The Guardian, NPR, Washington Post, and it is literally the first question out of the gate with reporters about, in a post-Roe America, what about all of these babies or, fetuses conceived in rape? And why would you advocate for laws that don't allow exceptions? Because in the past, the pro-life movement has been pretty willing, I would say, to accept exceptions in laws that were being advocated for and being passed at state legislatures to allow for abortions in cases of rape, incest, and life of the mother. I think, though, that the media is now kind of picked up that actually has changed. And there might be like a age demographic difference here. But it's so, the arguments I'm hearing on CNN, like when I unfortunately tuned into CNN one day and I regretted that decision for like 2 days.
Sorry. I'm
sure my blood pressure did as well. It's like the first thing out of the gate when they're talking about this decision. That's the first thing they talk about is rape, and it's like there's like all of these babies and humans out there that were conceived in rape, and they don't matter at all. And we need to make sure we're protecting America from them. And it's so disingenuous because, Catherine Foster from AUL just proved the other week on Capitol Hill when a congressman asked her, well, what about babies conceived in rape? And she just said, well, what if we excluded those types of abortions? Would you support the legislation? And the guy was like, my time is up, moved on. So it wasn't even like he cared about women who had undergone the trauma of a sexual assault. It's not even like he cared about that. They're just trotting out this extreme case to make the case for their extremist positions of abortions 100% of the time. So I'll stop talking. How have you been feeling as someone who was conceived in rape when you hear those people on CNN and MSNBC? What goes through your head?
Well, what I hear from them and all their thoughtless mantras is that you should be dead. You should be dead. That's what they're saying to me. You should have been killed. What kind of thought is that to actually express to another human being, regardless of their circumstances? And so when I hear them saying this, one, I know it's just a mantra that they can't back up, obviously, as you explained with Catherine. They cannot give any kind of explanation beyond that because it's their go-to button. It's like they're pre-programmed. Right. I can only say this, and that's all they have. And it's so tragic because we have to remember Roe began because of the lie of rape. That's how Norma McCorvey lied about being raped. That's how it all began. That's how abortion laws in the states that actually legalized it first began. They called it therapeutic abortion. If you remember in California, 1967.
That's right. Yeah.
Ronald Reagan. That was begun to be in those situations where it was rape, incest, and life of the mother. So here we're trying to go back to the very causal agent, if you will, or the reason for justifying all of these abortions 64 million later. So it's weird for me because I'm the one. It's interesting when people ask me, well, why shouldn't there be these exceptions? Why should we, isn't the pro-life movement so radical? I'm like, no, the other side is radical. They're the ones who want to kill babies even after they're born. They're the radical extreme ones. The people who want to protect every human life and protect women from being exploited, we're not the radical ones. We're the compassionate ones. And why wouldn't I fight for others whose stories are like mine? Why wouldn't I fight for them? I fight for the most marginalized among the marginalized. So that's what I think when I hear this "what about rape" excuse every single time, because they don't really mean it. They're just using it to justify 100% of abortions.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to back up some statistics, because we always hear this, what about rape? What about rape? How many abortions are we talking about, or how many? And then what would be the percentage of women who are sexually assaulted who actually become pregnant and then choose abortion? Because I think a lot of people think the numbers are much higher than they really are.
Yeah, well, we're talking, one, there's a problem in even having statistics that are reliable, because the one study that people typically go to is the ACOG study that was done back, actually, I think almost 20 years ago now, where it showed rape-related pregnancies comprised less than 1% of abortions. So if we were to apply that to today, 862,000 abortions, and 1%, 8,620. Of those women who became pregnant through rape, 42% chose life or did not choose the violence of abortion, which I personally found pretty surprising. But when I speak
That's much
to rape
higher
survivors,
than when you talk to anyone who is using this exception to justify abortion laws. You would think that 100% of women who become pregnant because of sexual assault choose abortion.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's not like our fake news establishment is into any kind of facts or actually providing any of the context or actually relaying the stories where women prove over and over and over again that they're stronger than the circumstances. And of course, these numbers don't even go into, well, what's the percentage of the rapists who are actually punished for the crime? And that's never part of the conversation. But it is really illuminating to find out that women who've become pregnant because of rape, that many of them actually don't choose abortion. And many more wouldn't choose abortion if they didn't have, screamed in their ear every other second that abortion's going to save you, abortion's going to heal you. No, it doesn't. It's just more violence. So there's so much of the conversation that's not had in the public square. If it weren't for, the pro-life movement, we wouldn't even hear these stories. We wouldn't know the stories of those like me conceived in rape, or mothers like, remember at the steps in Montgomery, Alabama, where Kelly, she had twins. And that was, I was crying when she's sharing her story. And she talked about,
2 twins.
And she said they saved her life. These are the stories that mainstream media doesn't ever want to tell.
That's right. Have you, in your work and all the speeches that you give across the country, and you're sharing your story, which I think has done a huge service to the pro-life movement and getting pro-lifers to reassess their views on abortion, cases of rape. Because when they meet you, they're like, wait a minute, I met this person who has these 4 incredible children, has this whole family that wouldn't be here if, the law were passed, that had these exceptions. But have you ever met mothers who were sexually assaulted, who became pregnant, who chose abortion, and what did they say to you?
Yes, I have. In fact, I would say hundreds of people who've experienced the horror and the violence of rape I've been able to meet through our various events through the Radiance Foundation. And what I actually found surprising is that there is a common thread with those who became parents, who chose to parent, those who chose adoption, and those who are post-abortive. In fact, there was one event where I sang this song called Meant to Be. It was a song that I'd written to my birth mother. And a post-abortive woman came up afterward and said that song brought such healing to her. She said, I aborted that child. She goes, but your song, for the first time, brought healing to my soul. And so here is a post-abortive woman, as a result of rape, who felt like my story brought healing to her. And so the common thread with a lot of these survivors that we've worked with, we've met, is that the child is the only redemptive part of such a horrific act. And mainstream media they don't, fake news doesn't want to talk about that. They're so radically pro-abortion that they can't see the triumph that rises from tragedy all the time. They talk about women being so strong, but yet, oh, you can't be strong in this situation. Nope, sorry. You're not strong enough. It's such a bizarre mixed message, but it's all part of the narrative of exploitation by the abortion industry and its allies.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so sad because you're absolutely right on. We say women are strong, hear us roar, empowered women, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
But then when it's like this, like, yeah, you can't do it. And it's almost like this societal laziness, I feel like, because it's like, oh, yeah, you're raped. Oh, just go have an abortion. You're all good.
Right.
It's that. How is having an abortion healing the trauma and helping you overcome the trauma of the sexual assault?
Right.
It's just like it's like this lazy man's excuse to not actually have to step up and serve and walk alongside a woman who's been a victim of sexual assault.
Yes. It's an investment. It's a personal investment that the abortion industry doesn't ever care about. They don't want to ever extend. I mean, people who experience the violence of rape need wholeness and healing, not, abortion hucksters waving the latest pink euphemistic sign. They don't need that. I pray that my birth mom experienced the wholeness and the healing that she needed. I never met her, but that's what I think about all the time when I think about the miracle that is the life that I've been able to live.
I mean, what a hero! This unmet hero that we don't know, we've never met. We don't know what she looks like. We don't like. It's unbelievable. You have these heroes walking around. You run into them at Walmart. It's unbelievable. I guess I saw a TV interview this Sunday of no, it was a couple Sundays ago. It was Governor Hutchinson from Arkansas. We at Students for Life Action, our sister organization, Students for Life, helped pass a law with Senator Jason Raper. That's our Life at Conception Act in Arkansas. It was our first state. We got Oklahoma to pass it this year. And it bans abortions. It's a criminal punishment at conception, so all abortions. And we purposely ensured that law did not have an exception for simply health, only life of the mother, and certainly did not have an exception for rape or incest because people conceived in rape are just as equally valuable as the rest of us. And we knew when we did this last year that the governor, who's a Republican, who has built his career saying he's pro-life, was teetering on vetoing it. So we generated all these calls and texts and emails into his office. He signed it into law, but then he just went on CNN and basically told, I guess because he's a lame duck governor, he's like applying to become the next, Republican commentator on CNN. They'll let CNN and MSNBC will let Republicans be commentators as long as they're like pro-choice. Right. As long as they're good on that issue, they're acceptable. But he literally said on national TV that he thought his own state of a bill he signed into law should go back and add in exceptions to the law allowing children conceived in rape and incest to be murdered.
Well, it shows the man has no core convictions, I guess. I mean,
I know. I was like, what political gain did you get out of this, sir? I don't know, besides potentially a gig on CNN in the future.
Yeah, and that's worthwhile, especially in the long run. Facing eternity, I mean, yeah, I went back and I thought, a few more human lives should be destroyed. Why? Well, because I want to be friends with the fake news folks. Nothing ever appeases that side, by the way. Nothing ever appeases them. You can say, and I've said this many times, if I give you the 1%, which would be horrible. But if I give you the 1%, you give me the other 99%. Of course, the answer is either silence or an emphatic no, or as we know in that hearing, just confusion, as people don't know what to say. They're constantly exploiting. What are the most horrific examples of violent exploitation, rape, in order to justify the unjustifiable? They will always go to rape and incest. And my question is, are they the ones who are actually reaching out and helping those who've experienced this? Are they the ones who are out there demanding that rapists be punished? No, they're actually, in fact, Planned Parenthood had spokespeople who joked, comedians who joked about rape. You had, who was the HBO girls? I can't even remember her name. I'm blanking out.
Leah Dunham.
Yeah, Lena. Yeah. She had a book out, Not That Kind of Girl, where she's actually promoting molesting her sister, and she lied about being raped. I mean, this is what the other side does. They lie about it, they exploit it, and they will forever try to use it to scare people into, well, we have to have this violence. And I'm just glad that my story can serve as a tangible example of what can actually happen when people step in and help someone become stronger than their circumstances.
And I think your story also shows the powerful effect that one person sharing their story can have, and how all of us have stories, and that it's kind of painful sometimes to have to share your stories. I know I personally am not a big fan of talking about myself, unless you're talking about like living full time in our camper and traveling the country. I'll talk to you all day about that because I have like endless facts and knowledge I've learned. And there are all kinds of crazy stories. But, talking about my children who have cystic fibrosis, that's a hard thing to get up on a stage, a room full of people, and have to talk about. But I find that when I share those things, that's when people come up to you and say, oh, I have to tell you my story. Let me tell you my story and why this matters. It really resonates. And I think what you have done over these past, 15, 16 years since you've been involved in the pro-life movement full time? When was the first time we met? It was like early days of Students for Life. It was
2009 that we started. So we're in our 13th year. So we would have met 2010.
Yeah. I mean, it was incredible just the difference it's made because of one person, you telling your story. So I do want to call that out and congratulate you for that. Because I think that, I was doing this interview with Bloomberg, and I don't know if it's gotten published yet, and I might get in trouble when it gets published. But I was trying to be really good. I really was. And Christy, our media strategist, was on the call listening, so she can text me if I'm doing bad, and tell me to shut up, stop saying that. But it was interesting because the Guardian had written a hit piece on Students for Life. They had called all of our board members. I had to call my parents. It was like, if someone calls you from these numbers, don't talk to them. And she was going to write a hit piece on us. And it was the best hit piece I've ever seen. So the hit piece was Students for Life says they're grassroots, but they're this powerhouse. And look at how much money they have and how many chapters there are. They're not grassroots. They're a powerhouse that's single-handedly gotten state legislators to exclude the rape and incest exceptions in legislation. And first of all, I was like, that isn't single-handedly us. This has been a movement-wide thing. But it was so great. It was awesome. I want to send this article to all of our supporters because she gave us all this credit in the world for something that was but I think what was interesting, because I was interviewing this Bloomberg reporter a couple days after, and they brought up the Guardian hit piece. So it was the best piece ever. But it was interesting because I do feel like, and maybe I wanted you to speak into this, it's almost like there's an age gap or a generational gap between especially with the Republicans. So this Governor Hutchinson, he's this old school white guy. He's been in the GOP for a long time. Versus the younger GOPers. It's almost I feel like the older pro-life generation, those who came of age in the 80s and 90s when the polling was really bad against us, we were losing. They had to fight harder to get the RNC to adopt a pro-life platform. And they had to really fight to get any pro-life law argued and voted on and advanced. And so, I feel like they remember those fights. And so it's oh, yeah, of course we should put rape and incest, life and mother exceptions. We're not even going to talk about it because it's so hard. And this younger generation, and I'm including you and I in this younger generation, just FYI. This younger generation, we don't have that same collective memory of like having to fight in 1991 in a state house to get this little pro-life bill that, just made like this really small incremental change, but was important pass. Right. So we're like, oh yeah, heck yeah. Like we're going all for it. But I feel like there's like a little bit of a, like this younger generation of pro-life leaders. Cause I mean, you think about, I hear Abby Johnson, Lila, like all of us are very consistent about, of course there shouldn't be exceptions for rape and incest and pro-life. I mean, do you feel like that there's been a sea change?
I do, and I think a lot of that could be inspired by younger people who aren't beholden to some sort of political points. I will say, like, for instance, Congressman Chris Smith, I mean, he's completely dedicated and devoted. He has a spine, unlike some of the others that were mentioned.
And he's an old school pro-lifer. He's right. Been doing this before it was cool.
Right, definitely. But those are few and far between. They're the ones who actually have to constantly drag some of the others, some of the GOPers who in party platform and word are profoundly pro-life, but in action, they kind of have to be moved. And so, I think it's a lot of what's happening is we don't owe anybody anything. Mainstream media, we know that we have to constantly figure out ways to break through in the messaging. And so we don't have to feel like we have to, temper our words and dilute our message. And so I think that's probably one of the big differences. Social media too allows us to say exactly what we think. Of course, and what does that get us now? It gets us suppressed and censored. But, Facebook, Twitter, and whatever else aside, the reality is we're unafraid to actually speak to it because one, we see the aftermath of abortion much more. Previous generations, so much of it is so hidden. We see the aftermath. We see generational impact of that. And we're tired of the same old narratives. And quite honestly, a lot of you, you especially, Abby, yes, Lila, just scrappers. I mean, just not afraid to face a fight. And I'm serious, and I love it. And
we call ourselves
inspiring.
Gritty at Students for Life.
Yes, gritty. That's right. You are. And that matters because it emboldens others then, young and old, to say, wait a minute, I have a voice. I know how to speak about this. And this is, we're feeding them the information. We're feeding them the truth. And it's inspiring to hear people. I mean, when I have a 76-year-old man come up to me in an event and say, I've never embraced this situation and you've changed my mind. Man, we can't ever stop speaking, the uncompromised truth. It changes people's minds. It really does. Yeah,
and I think the power of your story just really touches people's hearts who weren't even willing to consider it. Do you think when pro-lifers, are talking publicly about abortion, why we think abortion should be, women should be protected from the predatory abortion industry, why it should be banned, restricted, limited, whatever word I'm supposed to say. I forget the talking point word I'm supposed to say. I really need to remember that for the next podcast. But do you think it undermines our position if we're like, oh yeah, we want to ban all abortions except those babies conceived in rape and incest? Like, do you think it fundamentally hurts, like when we're trying to win somebody over and really, somebody who's never really thought about the issue, that inconsistency there, do you think that hurts?
I do think it can hurt in many ways. If we're talking about the value of every human life and having inherent worth, equal and inherent worth, then yes, when we make exceptions, then why can't this person make the other exception? Why can't that person make? It's always, well, it's a lived experience and you can't speak to it because there are all these different situations. Well, then it becomes that. So if it's this group this is acceptable, they're allowed to be aborted, then why can't it be anything else? The other thing it also, I think, undermines is when we talk about the physiological, psychological effects of abortion, it doesn't change because of the reason that a woman has an abortion. So we're also then demeaning women and diminishing them by saying, well, it's okay, you can subject yourself to this violence because it doesn't apply in these situations. Of course it does. It still does the same thing to her body. In fact, in cases of rape, it's just almost an even greater lie in that somehow you're going to heal because of this. And that's, I hear many stories from those who've survived being raped and having become pregnant, and to have to navigate through all of that, where they're told, the abortion, you don't want this child, it's gonna be the rapist's child, and there's so much that they're having to deal with, so much of that weight, of that burden, of that false narrative, that giving in, I think, maybe even amplifies how devastating those lies are. So yeah, I think we diminish our position, and we hurt our foundational, cry that every human life has inherent worth and dignity.
Do you think, I was talking to another reporter, and hopefully I can convince him to become pro-life, but it was interesting because I mentioned something about, there's not gold stars on birth certificates. Like, it doesn't matter if there were like candles and R&B music playing the night you were conceived, or if it was a total accident that you're, in the backseat of a car. Like, it's not like, oh, you get a gold star and you get, Kristen, you get a silver star because, you were a total accident. I mean, it was like, hey, you're a human being. You're here. Right. You're a citizen. I think it's interesting because what the abortion left is really trying to do is they're creating varying degrees of humanity and personhood, which is, never really works out too well for us in the history of America and the world. But it was interesting because one of our team members brought up about illegitimate children and how the laws once were like, if you were conceived outside marriage, you were considered illegitimate. Your birth was like illegitimate. Right. I don't know how a human being can be illegitimate, but you were a bastard, right? And bastards weren't allowed to inherit property. There was all kinds of like rules. I mean, I've watched a bunch of like romantic movies from medieval times, and there's always like a bastard child floating around who the king can't acknowledge or whatever. I watched too many of those movies. But that actually for hundreds of years or thousands of years was, if your parents weren't married or if your dad had an affair out of wedlock, you were a bastard. You didn't have the same rights as a legitimately conceived child. I actually think that's exactly what we've set up here with children who've been conceived in rape. And it's the progressives who are dragging society backward and be like, oh no, we need to reinstitute all of those things.
Right. And when does it end? I mean, the disabled, I have siblings who are physically disabled because they don't have the same right to life either, because who would ever want to have to face difficulty in their lives? Oh, and what about those who are born in poverty? Oh, no one should ever have to grow up in poverty. I mean, MSNBC's Tiffany Cross said the other day that adoption's not a safe option for black children, but she's radically pro-abortion. It was in a segment all about abortion. So they're better off dead. How can you be safer being aborted than safer in adoption? It's so insane. But they will constantly expand that category. And anytime you give them an inch, it's like it's everything. So if we don't actually hold fast to our core convictions that every human life has the right to life, then you allow that whole expansion of every excuse, every justification, and then we're back to square one again, saying that only some humans are actually persons. And yeah, let's not. Can we stop repeating that cycle? I'm just wondering. Can we stop?
Yeah, it's never worked. Like it's never worked out for us. One other question I had, I was thinking about this is, how do you feel? I guess what's your reaction to the fact that the Supreme Court has said it's okay, has ruled that the death penalty is too severe a punishment for the crime of rape, for committing a rape. But the Supreme Court has said for nearly 50 years that the innocent child conceived in rape can be legally killed.
Yes. In fact, I wrote about this in an op-ed that I wrote called What About Rape? And it's so insane. I think that ruling was 1976. So just years after Roe v. Wade, they're all of a sudden saying, no, a rapist can't be punished.
Wait, 3 years after Roe versus Wade, they said this?
Yes. So it's the same court. So here it's cruel and unusual punishment for the rapist who actually is committing the crime, but it's not for the child who can commit no crime in utero. except for, I guess, the crime of existence. And so that's the problem with the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, who has this arrogance that somehow they get to make these kinds of decisions. It never should have been their decision in the first place. They are not the arbiters of human value. And so if the initial draft ends up being the final version, yes, it can go back to the states. Of course, we know there's a whole lot of work to do in all those radically pro-abortion states, but there's a whole lot of work to maintain this belief, this passion of ours that every human life has purpose and every human life has value. But yeah, that's the Supreme Court is supremely wrong over and over and over again. They've overturned themselves 200 times since the existence of the Supreme Court, over 200 times. So I love when mainstream media says, this is unprecedented, overturning Roe. It's not unprecedented unless you don't know any history and do no journalism. Of course, it's not unprecedented.
Yeah, it's not unprecedented. Black people are still, 3/5 a person? Yeah.
Yeah.
You can
Well,
still
thank
legally
God.
segregate, yeah.
Plessy versus Ferguson was overturned. Thank God. It's just idiocy, but yet unfortunately it's the majority voice in our leftist news establishment. But this is why.
And by the way, the
leftists,
they're the ones who hate all institutions. I mean, this leak came, we all know, the news isn't talking about the leak. The Planned Parenthood and NARAL didn't have to come out and condemn the leak. They never did. The whole pro-life movement came out and condemned the leak immediately. They don't care about the whole fact that the whole way the Supreme Court functions has been dramatically altered, and our representative republic will always be weaker for it. They don't care about that. They will burn down the institution to get what they want. But we can't reverse. But I mean, they're going to, their new thing in June is going to be something like they're going to shut down the Supreme Court. I mean, they put non-scalable fences. Oh. Yeah. Who said that? I would like. I
can't remember the name of. There was a group that actually claimed responsibility for saying that they're going to burn down the Supreme Court. Wonderful. I mean, this is what when you're defending
we can't
violence,
reverse a decision. They hate institutions so much they're willing to burn down the Supreme Court's building, but we can't reverse a decision that 7 men made.
Mm-hmm. Well, isn't that patriarchy?
It is patriarchy. Hello.
But then we're just
students
assuming.
On campus hate when I say that. I know. I'm assuming their gender identity.
Right.
But it was 7 old men. What the heck?
Right.
It was, we actually just had to edit a graphic. One of our team members was like, 7 old men gave us, I'm like, we love old people. I'm fastly becoming an old person. We are not discriminatory in the pro-life movement against age. But it is kind of funny that these old men who didn't have to worry about getting pregnant, who, were so vastly out of touch, gave us Roe versus Wade. One question, this is not about this topic. I don't know if you're prepared to talk about this, but are you concerned your marriage is going to be invalid after Dobbs' decision? Because, I mean, you're mixed race, your wife is white. So, I mean, that means you've been working this whole time, Ryan, to invalidate your marriage, according to the left.
Well, we've been taking contingency measures, just in case. I've thought of, Michael Jacksoning my skin and bleaching. Of course not. It's the dumbest, stupid excuse that the left can come up with. Oh, no. Do you remember it was the left? It was the Democrats who actually passed the anti-miscegenation laws. It's the Democrats who actually are the party of racial division, from slavery to Jim Crow, poll taxes, literacy tests, anti-miscegenation laws. And now they want to be, oh no, they're going to roll them back. No, because it was actually the Republican Party that got rid of that nonsense. So it's so insane that... No,
I literally started laughing because I was like, so you mean Justice Thomas is going to vote to invalidate his own marriage? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, he's a self-loathing black conservative. I mean,
that's
so
right.
Of course
he's Uncle Tom. He doesn't count.
Please, I love. Justice
I was just
Thomas.
like, I mean, it was such a. I mean, you have to respect the tenacity of the pro-abortion movement, that they are so desperate to bring together a massive coalition of people to be with them on this issue. So they're like, it's going to invalidate your gay marriage. It's going to invalidate your biracial marriage. And if you're black, it's going to take away all of your rights. And then I got an email from the NAACP upset about this. I'm like, Planned Parenthood literally kills the most black people in the country. Nothing kills more black children or human beings in America than Planned Parenthood. Yet they got you writing a fundraising email for this. Like, it is. I mean, you got to admire the genius, the evil genius that takes to build a coalition like that. You have the NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, writing a letter justifying killing more black people.
Yes, but you have to call them by the right name, the National Association for the Abortion of Colored People.
Thank you. Well, you had a big thing with them a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, they sued me over that.
You sparred with them.
Yeah,
they sued you because you...
They sued me because I was speaking the truth, but they sued me because I was exercising free speech and parodied their name, and thank heavens for Alliance Defending Freedom. But the NAACP, I mean, Planned Parenthood standards... Yes. The NAACP,
that living, breathing document,
Well, if it's living and breathing, please stop killing it. That's what I say to progressives. Because that's what they're hell-bent on. They want to just kill it. They want to murder it, strangle it, abort it. That's really what they want to do. But all these, it's amazing because the same talking points about, gay marriage, which was a horrible ruling anyway, Obergefell versus Hodges. But to talk about like Loving versus Virginia, that all of a sudden we're now going to stop interracial marriages. Of course, we're all just one human race. I'm so sick of all that. But it's nonsense. But you have mainstream media just spouting off the exact same talking points. Every leftist organization.
President Biden said it.
Well, President Biden says whatever is fed to him by all of his handlers. But, I mean, the man obviously lost his core convictions, among other things, a long time ago. It's so sad, though, because they don't think through any of these things. And they don't actually have any defense of the wholesale slaughter of millions of children that they have to go to now. Oh, no, all the mixed marriages in America, you're in danger. No, we're not. But I'll tell you who is in danger. The women being exploited and the unborn, the preborn, they are the ones who are actually in danger.
Well, I'm going to end it there. This is a great interview podcast, Ryan. I am so grateful for all your advocacy work, all of your factivism that you're doing across the country with the Radiance Foundation. And I think, as I was trying to get to earlier, I don't know if I made the point well enough, but I think we've definitely seen a sea change within our movement, with the pro-life movement being willing to stand up and say, no, children conceived in rape and children conceived via incest, they matter, and they matter just like us, and that should be elementary. And I think you're a big reason for that, not Students for Life and our fake grassroots organization per The Guardian. I think a lot of that is to you. And I think your story speaks so well to every pro-lifer across the country of why you need to speak up and tell your story, whatever your story may be. Speak up and tell your story, because that you will have the ability to change and soften the hearts of thousands. So thanks, Ryan. How do folks follow you?
They can just go to our website, radiance.life, and you can follow us on some of the major platforms while we're still there.
That haven't you got banned from
there
that,
you have
so you never know. You always gotta be making sure you're on different platforms just in case you get banned.
Right.
That's why I always tell people, sign up for the email list and text message list, because you never know. We might need to get a hold of you, and they may ban us one day. And I actually think post Dobbs in the post Roe world, we could see that happen very soon. So thanks, Ryan. Thanks for coming on today. It was good to see you. And maybe next time I see you in a random city, we'll have more than like 2 minutes together. I literally passed Ryan walking out of the building. I was like, hi, bye, see ya. That was it. So
thanks so much, Kristen. I love your fire. I love your fire. It's awesome.
Thank you. And thank you all for listening today. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure, please, that you share this episode, friends and family. Make sure you hit subscribe to the Explicitly Pro-Life podcast, and spread the word. Now is the time, is all hands on deck. You all know what to do. This is our moment for a movement that's going to potentially save millions of lives, and we need you involved in this fight. Thanks, guys.